The cleaner's granddaughter climbed into the millionaire's coma bed. Something unexplainable happened. Eleanor Mitchell was cleaning the hallways of Mercy General Hospital when she heard desperate screams coming from room 245. Her 6-year-old granddaughter, Lily, had slipped from her sight and was now on top of the bed of the hospital's most important patient. Little Lily had climbed onto the hospital bed where Richard Blackwell, the millionaire businessman who had been in a coma for 3 months, was staying. The girl held his hand with her small hands and hummed softly a song she had learned at school. "Lily, get down from there right now!" shouted Eleanor, running toward the bed. But something strange was happening. The monitors tracking Richard's vital signs began to emit different sounds. The lines on the device that were once practically flat now showed movement. "Oh my goodness, what's happening?" murmured Nurse Nancy, who had rushed in upon hearing the noise. Lily kept singing, completely oblivious to the chaos around her. It was a simple nursery rhyme that all children know, but something in her voice seemed to deeply touch the unconscious man. "Please don't fire me, I need this job," begged Eleanor, trying to pull her granddaughter off the bed. "She's just a child, she didn't know what she was doing." Nurse Nancy was more concerned with the equipment than with Eleanor's pleas. Richard's heartbeat, which had maintained a monotonous rhythm for months, now showed significant variations. "How did this girl get in here? This room is always locked," questioned Nancy, checking the devices. Eleanor swallowed hard. She had an extra key to the room because she was responsible for the daily cleaning. But Lily shouldn't have had access to it. The girl was too clever for her own good. "She must have taken my key when I wasn't looking," confessed Eleanor. "Please, this will never happen again." At that moment, something completely unexpected happened. A single tear streamed down Richard Blackwell's face. The man who had been motionless for 3 months had reacted for the first time since the accident. "Dr. Wilson needs to see this," said Nancy, picking up the internal phone. Lily stopped singing and looked directly at Richard's face. Her blue eyes shone with a childlike curiosity that contrasted with the gravity of the situation. "He's sad, Grandma," said the girl, with the typical naturalness of children. "That's why I sang to make him feel better." Eleanor felt her heart tighten. Her granddaughter had always been a sensitive child, capable of perceiving things that adults sometimes ignored. But this was beyond any logical explanation. Dr. Wilson arrived minutes later, still adjusting his white coat. He was a 50-year-old man with graying hair and an always serious expression. He had worked with coma patients for decades and rarely was surprised by anything. "What happened here?" he asked, carefully observing the monitors. "Eleanor's daughter climbed onto Mr. Richards' bed and he reacted," Nancy quickly explained. "Look at the records from the last 15 minutes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out now continuing. Dr. Wilson examined the data with disbelief. In 3 months of treatment, Richard had never shown such significant reactions. His condition was stable but without signs of improvement. "This is highly irregular," he murmured, looking at Lily, who was still by the bed. "How could a child provoke this response?" Eleanor held her granddaughter's hand tightly, fearing the dismissal that would certainly come. She had worked at the hospital for 15 years and had never gotten into trouble. She was an exemplary employee, always punctual and dedicated. "Doctor, I take full responsibility," said Eleanor with a trembling voice. "My granddaughter didn't know she was doing anything wrong." "Do you really think a child can make a comatose man react?" asked a harsh voice from the doorway. It was Victoria Blackwell, Richard's wife, an elegant 45-year-old woman, always impeccably dressed with an expression that radiated coldness. Her high heels echoed across the hospital floor as she approached. "Victoria, Richard's vital signs changed significantly," explained Dr. Wilson. "It coincided exactly with the girl's presence." "Coincidence?" replied Victoria with disdain. "My husband has been in a coma for 3 months. I won't accept a cleaning lady and her granddaughter coming here to create false hopes." Lily looked at Victoria with curiosity. Even though just a child, she could sense the tension in the room. The little girl moved closer to Richard and whispered something in his ear that nobody could hear. "What is she doing?" asked Victoria, visibly irritated. "She's talking to him," replied Eleanor, watching her granddaughter affectionately. "Lily has always been like this, ever since she was little. Talks to everyone as if they're her friends." At that moment, the monitors began showing different readings again. Dr. Wilson quickly approached to check the data. Richard's brain activity levels were gradually increasing. "This is impossible," he murmured, adjusting his glasses to read the numbers better. Victoria crossed her arms, clearly impatient with the whole situation. To her, this was nothing but a waste of time created by negligent staff. "Doctor, I want this woman and this child away from my husband immediately," demanded Victoria. "And I want to know how you'll ensure this doesn't happen again." "Victoria, we need to investigate this reaction further," replied the doctor. "If there's any possible stimulation that could help Richard, we need to consider it." "Stimulation?" Victoria laughed ironically. "Doctor, my husband is a serious businessman, owner of several companies. I don't believe a child singing could make any difference in his treatment." Lily stopped whispering and looked directly at Victoria. Her blue eyes held an unusual seriousness for a 6-year-old. "You don't like him," said Lily with the brutal honesty of children. The following silence was awkward, Victoria visibly uncomfortable with the girl's observation, while Eleanor quickly tried to correct the situation. "Lily, don't speak like that," scolded Eleanor, red with embarrassment. "Apologize to the lady." "But it's true, Grandma," insisted Lily. "He's sad because nobody talks to him. That's why I sang." Dr. Wilson watched the interaction with scientific fascination. There was something in the simplicity of the child's words that seemed to touch on much deeper issues than appeared. "Lily, how do you know he's sad?" asked the doctor, kneeling to be at the girl's eye level. "Because he has the same face I make when I'm sad," she replied naturally, "and because he squeezed my hand when I sang." All the adults looked at each other in surprise. Richard had squeezed the girl's hand? That would be a voluntary movement, something that hadn't happened in months. "Are you sure he squeezed your hand?" asked Dr. Wilson. "Yes," confirmed Lily. "It was very slow, but he squeezed, like when my grandma holds my hand to cross the street." Victoria rolled her eyes, clearly unbelieving about the whole situation. To her, this was nothing but a child's imagination, mixed with the adult's unfounded hopes. "Doctor, this has gone far enough," said Victoria firmly. "I want this woman fired and that child banned from this hospital." Eleanor felt her world crumbling. Losing her job would mean she couldn't support Lily, who had lived with her since her parents left to work in another state. The girl was her responsibility and her greatest joy. "Please, Mrs. "Victoria," begged Eleanor. "I've worked here for 15 years. I've never had any problems. This was an accident." "An accident that could have harmed my husband's treatment," Victoria retorted. "I cannot accept this kind of negligence." Dr. Wilson was torn between medical protocol and his scientific curiosity. The data he had observed was undeniable, but he was also responsible for the safety of all patients. "Victoria, I understand your concern," said the doctor calmly. "But we also need to consider that Richard showed the first significant reaction in 3 months." "So what?" asked Victoria impatiently. "That doesn't mean an unruly child should have access to his room." Lily tugged her grandmother's skirt and whispered something in her ear. Eleanor leaned down to listen and looked visibly surprised by what she heard. "What did she say?" asked Dr. Wilson, noticing Eleanor's reaction. Eleanor hesitated before answering. What Lily had said was so specific that it seemed impossible for a 6-year-old to know. She said that Mr. Richard works at a construction company and that he has a picture of a little girl on his desk, Eleanor said hesitantly. The silence was absolute. Richard Blackwell was indeed the owner of one of the largest construction companies in the state, but how could a 6-year-old know that? And the picture on the desk. "How does she know that?" asked Victoria, for the first time showing genuine interest in the conversation. "I don't know," Eleanor answered honestly. "Lily has never been to his office. Neither have I." Dr. Wilson was growing more and more intrigued. He was beginning to suspect that something far more complex was happening here than a simple coincidence. "Lily, where did you see Mr. Richard's office?" the doctor asked gently. "I didn't see it," the girl replied simply. "He told me. When did he tell you? The doctor insisted. Just now when I was singing, Lily said as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He said he misses his daughter. Victoria visibly paled. Richard had lost a daughter years ago, a subject he could never discuss openly. How could a strange child know something so intimate? That's impossible, Victoria murmured. He's unconscious. But he's in here, said Lily, lightly touching Richard's chest. He just can't get out. Dr. Wilson decided he needed to investigate this situation more deeply. There were documented cases of coma patients showing higher levels of consciousness than they appeared to, but he had never witnessed anything like this. Eleanor, I need to run some tests, said the doctor. Could you allow Lily to stay here for a few more minutes? Under medical supervision, of course. Absolutely not, Victoria protested. I won't allow you to turn my husband's treatment into a circus. Victoria, with all due respect, Richard's vital signs improved in the girl's presence, the doctor argued. As a physician, I have an obligation to investigate any possibility of progress. Eleanor looked at Lily, who seemed completely at ease next to Richard. It was as if the girl felt a special connection with this man she didn't even know. If the doctor thinks it can help, Eleanor said hesitantly, I'll allow it, but only if it's safe for my granddaughter. Of course it will be safe, Dr. Wilson assured. Just a few minutes to observe the reactions. Victoria Blackwell was visibly frustrated, but she couldn't deny that the medical arguments had merit. Even against her will, she ended up agreeing to the test. All right, said Victoria reluctantly, but I want everything documented, and if there's any problem, this woman will be held responsible. Dr. Wilson positioned additional equipment to monitor Richard's brain activity more precisely. Lily continued by the bedside, now telling him about her school and her friends. Today at school the teacher said we're going to put on a play about animals, Lily said cheerfully. I'm going to be a little bunny. Would you like to see? The monitors showed consistent increases in brain activity whenever Lily spoke directly to Richard. It was as if his brain was specifically responding to her voice. This is extraordinary, murmured Dr. Wilson, noting the data. Neuronal activity is increasing in measurable ways. Victoria watched everything with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Part of her wanted to believe something positive was happening, but another part feared creating expectations that might be disappointed. Doctor, does this mean he could wake up? Asked Eleanor hopefully. It's too early to say, the doctor replied cautiously, but it certainly indicates there's much more brain activity than we imagined. Lily stopped talking and placed her small hand on Richard's forehead, as if checking for a fever. The gesture was so natural and tender that even Victoria was moved. He's tired, announced Lily. He needs to rest a little. As if he had heard the girl's words, the monitors gradually returned to their previous patterns. Richard seemed to have entered a deeper sleep, but this time different from his previous comatose state. Vital signs are stabilizing, observed Dr. Wilson, but at a slightly better level than before. Eleanor held Lily's hand, emotional about what she had witnessed. Her granddaughter had managed to provoke a reaction in a man that specialist doctors couldn't reach. I think we should go, said Eleanor. Thank you for allowing it, Doctor. Actually, Eleanor, said Dr. Wilson, I'd like to propose something. How about if Lily visited Richard regularly? Under medical supervision, of course. The proposal took everyone by surprise. Victoria immediately showed opposition, while Eleanor was torn between hope and fear of the consequences. Doctor, this is highly irregular, protested Victoria. We can't turn medical treatment into this. Victoria, in 3 months your husband hasn't shown significant improvement, argued the doctor. If there's something that might stimulate his recovery, we need to try. Lily tugged her grandmother's skirt again and whispered something in her ear. Eleanor listened carefully and became visibly emotional. What did she say this time? Asked Dr. Wilson. She said that Mr. Richard asked her to come back tomorrow, Eleanor said with tears in her eyes, and that he promised to try to wake up. The silence that followed was charged with emotion. Even Victoria seemed shaken by the sincerity in Lily's voice and the logical impossibility of what was happening. All right, Victoria said finally. But I want clear rules, set schedules, constant medical supervision, and at any sign of trouble, this stops immediately. Eleanor couldn't believe what she was hearing. Not only would she keep her job, but her granddaughter could be part of something that truly mattered. "Thank you, Mrs. Blackwell," said Eleanor sincerely. "I promise we'll take care of everything properly." Dr. Wilson began organizing a protocol for the visits. He needed to document everything adequately to scientifically justify what he was proposing. "We'll come back tomorrow at the same time," said Eleanor, taking Lily by the hand. "Let's go, my dear." "Goodbye, Mr. Richard," said Lily, waving to the man in the bed. "Tomorrow I'll tell you all about my dance class." As Eleanor and Lily left the room, Victoria was alone with her husband for the first time since the incident. She looked at him with eyes that no longer held their previous coldness. "Richard, if you're really in there," she whispered, "you need to fight to come back. Maybe that little girl is right. Maybe you really can hear everything." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The next day, Eleanor arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. She had spent the whole night thinking about the events of the previous day and had barely slept. Lily, on the other hand, seemed eager to see her new friend. "Grandma, can I bring a drawing for Mr. Richard?" asked Lily as they got ready. "Of course, my dear," replied Eleanor, touched by her granddaughter's thoughtfulness. "I'm sure he'll love it." When they arrived at room 245, they found Dr. Wilson already waiting with several additional pieces of equipment. He had called in specialist colleagues to observe and document what might happen. "Good morning, Eleanor." "Good morning, Lily," greeted the doctor. "Are you ready for another visit?" Lily nodded happily and ran toward Richard's bed. This time, instead of climbing onto the bed, she pulled up a chair to sit at his level. "Hi, Mr. Richard," she said, placing the drawing on his chest. "I made this for you. It's a little bunny, just like the one I'm going to be in the school play." The monitors immediately began registering increased activity. The doctors present watched with scientific fascination what was taking place. "The response is even faster today," commented Dr. Jennifer, the specialist neurologist Dr. Wilson had called in to observe the case. Lily began telling him about her previous day, what she had learned at school, and about her friends. It was a one-sided conversation, but she spoke to Richard as if he were responding. "You know, Mr. Richard, my grandma told me you have a really big company," Lily remarked casually. "It must be hard to take care of so many things." To everyone's surprise, an almost imperceptible expression crossed Richard's face. It was as if he were trying to respond, or at least show that he was listening. "Doctor," he moved his eyebrow, whispered Eleanor, emotional. "I saw," confirmed Dr. Wilson. "Everything is being recorded." Victoria arrived at that moment, carrying a folder of documents. She had come straight from a meeting with the lawyers about Richard's business affairs and looked tense. "How are things today?" she asked, trying to disguise her anxiety. "Richard is showing faster and more pronounced responses," explained Dr. Jennifer. "It really is a fascinating case." Lily looked at Victoria and noticed her worried expression. With the sensitivity typical of children, she sensed that something was wrong. "You seem sad today," observed Lily. "Mr. Richard gets sad too when you're sad." Victoria was surprised by the girl's observation. It was true that she was worried about the business, but how could a child perceive that? "Why do you think he gets sad when I'm sad?" asked Victoria, genuinely curious. "Because he told me he really likes you," Lily replied naturally. "But he said you two don't talk like you used to." The silence that followed was heavy with emotion. Victoria and Richard had indeed grown apart in recent years, especially after they lost their daughter. Work had become a refuge for Richard, while Victoria had withdrawn into her own world. He really said that?" asked Victoria, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, he did," confirmed Lily. "And he said he misses when you used to laugh together." Victoria couldn't hold back her tears. That was exactly how she felt too, but she had never been able to express it. Years of resentment and misunderstandings had created a distance that seemed impossible to overcome. "Victoria, would you like to try talking to him?" suggested Dr. Wilson gently. "Maybe he'll respond to your voice too." Victoria hesitated for a moment, but then approached the bed. It had been months since she had spoken directly to Richard, only about practical matters related to his treatment. "Richard, if you really can hear me," Victoria began hesitantly, "I want you to know that I miss how we used to be too." The monitors registered an immediate change in Richard's brain patterns. It was as if he was straining to respond to his wife's voice. "Keep going," encouraged Dr. Jennifer. "He's reacting." "I know we grew apart after we lost Emma," Victoria continued, tears flowing freely. "And I know my coldness may have contributed to that, but I never stopped loving you." At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Richard slightly moved the fingers of his right hand, as if trying to reach Victoria. The movement was small, but clearly intentional. "He moved his hand," exclaimed Eleanor, emotional. Victoria immediately held Richard's hand, feeling a slight squeeze in response. It was the first real physical communication between them in 3 months. "Richard, I'm here," whispered Victoria, "and I won't leave your side anymore." Lily watched everything with satisfaction, as if she had accomplished an important mission. Her role had been to connect two people who loved each other, but had gotten lost in pain. "Grandma, I think they'll be okay now," Lily said softly to Eleanor. The doctors present were documenting every movement, every reaction. The case was becoming unique in medical literature about coma states. "Doctor, what does this mean for his recovery?" asked Victoria, still holding Richard's hand. "It means there's much more consciousness than we imagined," explained Dr. Jennifer, "and that positive emotional stimuli may be crucial for recovery." During the following days, a routine was established. Lily visited Richard every morning before school, talking about her daily plans. Victoria began spending more time at the hospital, sharing with him her concerns about business and her hopes for the future. "You know, Richard," Victoria said during one of her visits, "I made some decisions about the company. I implemented that employee assistance program you always wanted to do. I thought you'd like to know." The progress was gradual but consistent. Richard began showing more movements. His periods of increased brain activity became longer, and occasionally he seemed to try to open his eyes. Eleanor had become a constant presence at the hospital, not just as an employee, but as an essential part of Richard's treatment. Her granddaughter had created an inexplicable bond with him. "Eleanor, I have a proposal for you," Dr. Wilson said one day. "How about working specifically with Richard? It would be a kind of assisted therapy." "Doctor, I'm not trained for that," protested Eleanor. "I'm just a cleaning lady." "But your granddaughter has something no therapist has managed to achieve," argued the doctor, "and you've been fundamental in the process." It was Victoria who surprised everyone with her response. "Eleanor, I'd like to propose something different to you," said Victoria. "How about coming to work directly for me, taking care of Richard and helping Lily continue with the visits?" The offer was generous and represented a complete change in Eleanor's life. It meant financial security and the possibility for Lily to continue helping Richard. "Mrs. Victoria, I don't know what to say," replied Eleanor emotionally. "It's such an honor." "It's the least I can do," said Victoria sincerely. "Lily is helping my husband in a way that conventional medicine couldn't." 3 weeks after their first meeting, Richard managed to open his eyes for the first time. Lily was by his side, showing him a new drawing when he suddenly blinked and stared directly at her. "Grandma!" shouted Lily excitedly. "He's awake!" The moment was magical. Richard still couldn't speak or move completely, but his eyes were alert and focused. When Victoria came running in, he managed to squeeze her hand more firmly. "Welcome back," whispered Victoria, kissing her husband's forehead. Richard's recovery was slow but steady. First came back the basic movements, then limited speech. Throughout the process, Lily continued to be his daily companion, telling stories and sharing her school adventures. "Do you remember Lily?" asked Victoria one day, when Richard could already say a few words. "Angel," replied Richard with effort. "My angel." That's how he referred to Lily. To him, she had been an angelic presence who brought him back to life when all seemed lost. As Richard regained his functions, a slightly different personality began to emerge. The workaholic and sometimes cold man had given way to someone more sensitive, more attentive to the people around him. "Victoria," said Richard one day, already able to form complete sentences, "I want to make some changes in our lives." "What kind of changes?" she asked, curious. "I want us to spend more time together. I want to be a better husband, like we were before we lost Emma." The mention of their daughter no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Richard had found a way to honor Emma's memory through the affection he felt for Lily. "And Eleanor and Lily?" asked Victoria. "How would you like their situation to be?" "They're part of our family now," replied Richard without hesitation. "Lily brought me back. I can't imagine our life without them." The decision to make Lily his goddaughter felt natural. Richard and Victoria couldn't have other children, but Lily had filled a void in their lives they didn't even know existed. "Lily, would you like to be our goddaughter?" asked Richard one day when he was almost fully recovered. "What does that mean?" asked the girl curiously. "It means we'll be your family too," explained Victoria. "That we'll take care of you and your grandmother forever." Lily's smile was the most eloquent answer they could receive. For a child who had grown up without her parents present, having an extended family meant security and unconditional love. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us, who are just starting out. Now continuing. 6 months after waking from the coma, Richard had not only fully recovered but transformed his life radically. His company implemented revolutionary employee wellness policies, inspired by his experience at the hospital. "Did you know that Eleanor has always had brilliant ideas about how to improve working conditions?" said Richard to Victoria during dinner. 15 years cleaning the hospital and observing how things work gave her a unique perspective. Eleanor Mitchell had been promoted to Human Resources Supervisor at the company, a position created especially for her. Her life experience and sensitivity in dealing with people proved invaluable in her new role. "Richard, sometimes I think all of this is a dream," Eleanor said one day. 6 months ago, I was just a cleaning lady worried about keeping my job. "And look how far we've come," Richard replied with a smile. "Lily not only saved me but changed all our lives for the better." Lily remained a child, but her special role in Richard and Victoria's lives was recognized by everyone. She had earned a full scholarship to one of the best schools in the city, securing a bright future. "Godfather Richard," Lily said one day, using the title she had naturally adopted, "why did you get sick?" The question caught Richard off guard. Even after months of recovery, he still didn't have a satisfactory answer for his own experience. "You know, Lily, sometimes the body gets tired when we don't take proper care of it," Richard explained. "I worked too much and forgot to take care of the important things." "Like love?" Lily asked with the simple wisdom of children. "Exactly like love," Richard confirmed, moved. Richard's recovery had allowed him and Victoria to rediscover each other. They began couples therapy and discovered that the loss of their daughter, rather than separating them, could have brought them even closer together if they had known how to deal with the pain together. "Richard, do you remember anything from the time you were in a coma?" Victoria asked one evening. "I remember voices," he replied thoughtfully. "Especially Lily's voice. It was as if she gave me strength to keep fighting." "And my voice? Do you remember my voice?" "Your voice gave me peace," Richard said, holding his wife's hand. "Even when I couldn't respond, I felt you were there." The first anniversary of Richard's awakening, as they called it, was celebrated at Mercy General Hospital. The family had organized a small party to thank all the medical staff who had cared for him. "Dr. Wilson, as a physician, can you scientifically explain what happened?" asked a journalist covering the story. "Officially, we classify it as an exceptional recovery, stimulated by positive emotional factors," the doctor replied. "Unofficially, I believe we witnessed something that transcends our current understanding of medicine." Lily, now 7 years old, had become a local celebrity. Her story with Richard inspired other patients and families facing similar situations. "Lily, what would you say to other children who have grandparents or family members who are sick?" asked the same journalist. "That talking to them is important," Lily replied seriously. "Even when it seems like they're not listening, they really are. And that love can work miracles." The girl's wisdom impressed everyone. Richard and Victoria often wondered how such a young child could have such clarity about such complex issues. "I think some people are born with special gifts," Victoria told Richard. "Lily has this natural ability to connect with people." Richard's company had become a model of social responsibility. Lily's project, named in honor of the girl, offered medical and psychological support to employees and their families. "Richard, are you proud of what we've managed to build?" Eleanor asked during a board meeting, a position she had assumed after demonstrating exceptional talent for people management. "I'm proud of all of us," Richard replied, "especially of how we managed to turn a tragedy into something positive." 2 years after his recovery, Richard decided to write a book about his experience, not to promote himself, but to give hope to other families going through similar situations. "The Whisper That Brought Me Back," Victoria read the proposed title. "I like it. That's exactly what Lily did. The book would become a bestseller, but all royalties would go toward research on coma states and alternative treatments." Richard wanted his experience to benefit others. "Godfather, are you going to be famous?" asked Lily when she heard about the book. "No, my dear," Richard replied. "What will be famous is the story of how a brave little girl saved a lost man." The relationship between Richard and Lily remained special. They had developed their own codes, inside jokes and traditions that only they understood. It was as if they were truly biological father and daughter. "Lily is growing up so fast," Victoria commented one day. "Soon she won't need us anymore." "I think we'll always need each other," Richard replied wisely. "This bond we've created goes beyond need. It's genuine love." Eleanor watched her granddaughter's growth with pride and gratitude. The girl was having opportunities she had never dreamed of providing, but without losing her humble and caring essence. "Grandma, do you ever feel sad that I spend so much time with my godparents?" Lily asked one day. "Never, my dear," Eleanor answered sincerely. "I'm happy because you have more people who love you. Love doesn't diminish when it's shared. It only grows." The 3rd anniversary of Richard's awakening was celebrated with the inauguration of the Center for Consciousness Studies at Mercy General Hospital. The center would research cases similar to Richard's, trying to better understand the mechanisms involved in recovery. "This center represents our attempt to turn a personal miracle into knowledge that can help others," Richard said in his inauguration speech. Lily, now 9 years old, had become the center's youth ambassador. Her role was to talk to other children whose family members were hospitalized, offering hope through her own experience. "Lily, don't you ever get tired of helping other people?" asked a hospital volunteer. "No," she replied simply. "When you help someone, you feel good too. It's like when you give a gift and feel happy seeing the person happy." The doctors who had followed Richard's case often used it as an example in lectures and conferences. It was a case that challenged many assumptions about coma states and recovery. "What we learned from Richard Blackwell," Dr. Wilson said in his lectures, "is that the human brain still holds mysteries we need to explore, and that the power of emotional bonds may be greater than we imagine." Richard had returned to work, but with a completely different approach. His company became known both for the quality of its services and for the exceptional treatment given to employees. "Richard, you've changed so much," commented an old partner. "Sometimes it's hard to believe you're the same person." "I'm the same person," Richard replied, "but now I understand what really matters in life. Professional success means nothing if you don't have people you love by your side." The friendship between the two families had solidified completely. Weekends, holidays, and special occasions were always celebrated together. They had created their own traditions that strengthened their bonds even further. "Sometimes I think about what our life would be like if Lily hadn't entered that room," Victoria said during a family dinner. "I don't like to think about that," Richard replied. "I prefer to be grateful for what happened and focus on what we can still build together." Lily, who was listening to the adults' conversation, smiled with satisfaction. Even without fully understanding the impact of her actions, she knew she had been part of something very important. "Godfather, can I ask you a question?" said Lily. "Of course, my dear. Are you happy now?" The question, asked with Lily's typical sincerity, deeply touched Richard. He paused to think before answering. "I'm happier than I ever imagined I could be," he replied. and I owe much of that happiness to you." "And I owe much of my happiness to you," Lily responded. "I guess we're even." The girl's observation drew laughter from everyone at the table. Even at just 9 years old, she could find simple ways to express profound truths. Richard looked around the table, his wife Victoria, Eleanor, and Lily, and felt truly blessed. The accident that could have ended his life had become the beginning of a much richer and more meaningful one. "You know what?" said Richard, standing up and hugging Lily. "I think every day is an opportunity to be grateful for all that we have." "And to keep taking care of each other," added Lily, returning the hug. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe in the power of emotional bonds? Have you experienced a similar situation? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to leave your like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories that warm the heart.